When you have a movie that is very well edited, that is very well written, has great acting performances, is beautifully shot, and is in general just directed to perfection, then you probably have a David Fincher movie. Hello everyone, welcome back to a new director's movie ranking by J. Mera. And these are really videos that I really like to make. Basically, I'm just talking about an entire filmography of one specific director, in which I'm gonna rank all of his movies from my least favorite to my favorite. That's basically what I do in a director's movie ranking. And I have done some of these before, like Tarantino, James Gunn, my latest was Christopher Nolan, and that's already from the summer when Oppenheimer came out, so it's really been a while since I have done a director's movie ranking. So it was about time to do a new one. And seeing The Killer recently came out, the new David Fincher movie, it was like a good time to talk about David Fincher's his filmography. And this is a director that I really admire. He's not my favorite director, that's still Quentin Tarantino, it's probably gonna stay that way. But David Fincher is definitely one of my 5 favorite directors. I really like the way he makes movies. He really is a perfectionist director. You can really tell that when you watch his movies. Always a beautiful shot, the editing is always top notch, it's very well written movies, even though he does not always do the writing himself. And the direction is always to perfection. That's what I like about David Fincher. On a technical level, it will always be a sublime movie. And story-wise, also, some of these movies I really love, some I really call personal favorites of mine, so really excited to talk about his filmography. And he made 12 movies as of today. So let's get to it. And we start at the bottom, at number 12. And to be honest, and to be fairly to David Fincher, I do not always see this as a David Fincher movie. And that's Alien 3. This is basically his debut, 30 years ago, but yeah, he got the director credit. But I don't really see this as a debut. For me, his movie debut, his actual debut, will always be 7. But he got the credit as director for this one, but he was not always allowed to do his vision of the movie. He did not really make the movie he wanted to make. Best to watch the assembly cut, that is the closest to Fincher his vision, but still not really there. And the movie itself, it just sucks. It's not my movie. I really dislike this movie as an Alien movie and as a David Fincher movie. It frustrated me from start and it frustrated me at the end. So I really despise this film. And I cannot really see this as a David Fincher movie. But to include in this ranking, it will come at the bottom. At number 11 is actually his biggest disappointment for me, and that is Mank, one of his recent movies. It's from 2020. And I was really looking forward to this movie. It has been 6 years since his last movie, Gone Girl. He did Mindhunter in the meantime. But I was really looking forward to see another David Fincher movie. And it was about Hollywood during the 50s, about this screenwriter. So that was very interesting. I really like movies about making movies. And this is a David Fincher movie about making movies, so this is going to be great, I thought, but it wasn't the case. It was really disappointing, and I couldn't really care for anything that happened in this movie. Wouldn't care for the characters. It did not have my interest, and I don't know. It was just boring for me. So I did not get into this movie at all. So it has to come at number 11. And at number 10. We have actually his newest movie, and that is The Killer. The Killer starring Michael Fassbender. I did a whole review on that, please check out that review. I really talk about the technical aspects of the film and the story of the film more than here. But in short, on a technical level, it was a very sublime movie. I really enjoyed on how perfectly made the movie was. But story-wise, it was a bit too simple and at times very boring. So that's why it's not higher up in the list. Number 9, and these are actually my favorite David Fincher movies. These I consider David Fincher movies at his prime, at his peak. In number 9 we have The Game from 1997. And I really was stunned by The Game when I first saw it. This is the perfect movie for a first watch. That first watch was amazing. I really was always surprised what was going to happen next and how things were developing during the movie. Michael Douglas was excellent in this movie, and you really feel for him. He started off as a very serious man, but all the way in the game he gets more and more paranoid on what's happening in his life. So that was really fascinating to see. But the movie really worked well the first time you saw it. By rewatch, it kinda misses that effect, that same vibe you have when you watch it the very first time. So, but still, I like this movie a lot. Number 8 we have Panic Room from 2002. And Panic Room, the first David Fincher movie I actually saw when I was a kid. I know my mother was a big fan of this movie, still is I believe. And we had it on the VHS, and it was quite often on the television. And I really liked it. Jodie Foster and Kristen Stewart both played perfect, very well. Also Forest Whitaker was a very good villain in this movie. And basically it's just your typical home invasion thriller. We have a lot of these kind of movies in that specific genre. But in the hands of David Fincher, this typical home invasion thriller becomes a masterful home invasion thriller. Because this is what it is, a masterful home invasion thriller that I watch every now and then. Good movie. Number 7. We have actually a first watch for me. I just saw this last week for the very first time. I always knew of its existence, but for some reason I never got to it to watch it. And that's The Curious Case of Benjamin Button at number 7. And yes, it's a very long movie, slow at times, boring at times even. But the premise of this movie is so unique, so original. It's basically about a guy that was born old and dies young. Instead of getting older, he gets younger. And that's a fascinating idea for a movie. And David Fincher actually makes a fascinating movie around this idea. Brad Pitt and Cate Blanchett very well in their roles, and the first half of the movie was very slow, but especially that last hour of the movie, that really got to me. There was some beautiful moments in that movie. And this movie had actually a bigger impact than I could have imagined, because the movie is really about life and about a life and about getting older and what it means to getting older, or what it means to be young. And it really keeps you thinking, and that's what I really admire on that movie. Number 6 we have Gone Girl. And Gone Girl was quite an experience to watch. Unfortunately, I knew the ending. It was spoiled for me before I actually watched the movie. That was a shame, but nonetheless, it's still an amazing movie. Especially the couple, Ben Affleck and Rosamund Pike. Their marriage is one tough marriage, and Rosamund Pike was just brilliant in this movie. How she plays this crazy and manipulative character, that was wow. But the thing that I admire the most about the movie Gone Girl is the portrayal of the media in this movie. How the media is actually represented, and how the media frame certain events or place certain events in a certain perspective, or how they manipulative even the events in a certain way. That was very fascinating. we don't have a lot of movies about the media itself and the impact the media has, and Gone Girl is that movie, so I really admire Gone Girl for that aspect. And now we are at the top 5, and in the top 5, my top 5 Fincher movies, we actually have his 3 serial killer movies. David Fincher really likes to make movies or stories about serial killers. And at number 5 we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo from 2011. Another book adaptation, just like Gone Girl, but The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is based on the Millennium books from Stieg Larsson. Those books I actually know about. I'm not a reader myself, but I have read passages from those books, and those are some very well written books. And once again, in the hands of David Fincher, that masterful book becomes a masterful film, and that is what The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo is. Acting, once again, great, especially by Rooney Mara, who plays Liz Carmander, a very interesting but complex character. The editing is top notch. This is probably one of the best edited movies out there. Also beautiful shots with those snowy landscapes. And that third act really makes the movie for me. That was so intense, thriller it became, and I love it. It was a real good cinematic experience. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, definitely a recommendation. But another serial killer movie, probably the most famous David Fincher movie, and that is Seven, comes at number 4. Seven is, for me, definitely David Fincher, his debut, and he does everything perfect with his first movie. He shows the audience what he can do as a director. Not Alien 3, but Seven. Seven, also interesting premise about a serial killer that is fascinated by the 7 deadly sins, and he kills related to those 7 sins. That's very cool idea. Also our 2 detectives, very memorable detectives. As soon as we are introduced to our detectives, we're gonna remember them for a long time. And that's not always the case. Most detectives in this kind of genre we forget about once we have seen the movie. Not these 2. These 2 really left a mark on us. And Seven, actually a perfect movie, definitely a classic. It's one of the defining movies of the 90s. Just like Gone Girl, the ending was spoiled for me before I saw the movie. Kinda ruined my experience. Maybe it would have been higher up in the list if I haven't know the ending before I watched the movie. But at number 3 we have actually, in my opinion, his best serial killer movie, and that is Zodiac from 2007. Based on true events on the Zodiac Killer. A killer whose identity is still a mystery. A killer who is never captured. And David Fincher made a movie about that. It's also taking place in the 20th century, the 60s, 70s I believe. About these journalists, detectives and a cartoonist who are all in their way getting fascinated, obsessed even, of the identity of this killer. And the 3 characters are played perfectly by Jake Gyllenhaal, Mark Ruffalo, and especially Robert Downey Jr. This movie is a fascinating movie. This is maybe Fincher's longest movie, but there was never a boring or a dull moment in this movie. It was fascinating from start to finish, especially the second half. That's the best half of the movie. And number 2, we have probably David Fincher, his best movie, and that is The Social Network. I saw this movie not in 2010. For some reason I waited 10 more years to finally watch this movie in 2020 when everyone is home because of the COVID crisis. So I thought, let's give this movie a watch. Is it really that good? And I saw the movie and I was stunned by it. I was stunned by how great this movie is. This was really a great movie. It's one of the best written movies I saw. I immediately say that to myself and I finished the movie. That was one well written movie. The script was from Aaron Sorkin, who is a very praised screenwriter. I get why. I also get why not. For me, he really has two amazing scripts, and that's this movie and Moneyball. Those two movies are very well written. And also The Social Network in the hands of David Fincher once again, it becomes a masterful film. Jesse Eisenberg, fantastic performance. Andrew Garfield even, fantastic. That was even before he was Spider-Man. And Justin Timberlake was even a surprise. And the movie is basically about the invention of Facebook. Basically a boring theme. But the movie wasn't boring at all. It was amazing. It was fascinating. It's one of the greatest movies I ever seen. And this is the best David Fincher movie ever. So far, can still make a better movie. But my favorite David Fincher movie is Fight Club from 1999. I love Fight Club. Fight Club is one of my favorite movies. It became one of my favorites the first time I watched it, and years later it still is. It's definitely my top 10. It's a very quotable movie. Sometimes I even quote lines from this movie in my daily life. It's so much in my mind, this movie. Those two characters, played by Brad Pitt and Edward Norton, are two of the most fascinating film characters I ever seen. The movie is very well made, it's very well written, it's very interesting. It also says something about masculinity in a modern society, especially in the 90s. So that's also very fascinating, and I watch this movie every now and then, and I'm still amazed by how good this movie is. Last summer I actually got a chance to watch it on the big screen. The first time I saw it on the big screen, and I was amazed by it. And every time I watch this movie again, there is something I noticed. I didn't notice before, but then I saw it for the first time, or I get it for the first time. Now the last time I saw it, there was a joke in this movie, something the narrator talks about. I never laughed about, but now, in the theater, I laughed about it, so that was new. There's always something new to discover in Fight Club. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's my favorite David Fincher movie, for sure. So guys, this was my ranking of all David Fincher, his movies. I hope you enjoyed my ranking. Always be free to share your ranking below in the comments, or just tell me what is your favorite David Fincher movie. Would love to know that. And if you want to see more rankings of me in the future, always be free to subscribe to my channel. Until the next time.